Travis Wayne Goodsell. Alrighty. I had gotten the idea this morning to put the symbol of Lucifer in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints video that I did yesterday, part 1. Recognize that it is part 1. Still have part 1 to do, or part 2 to do. To increase the amount of coverage on YouTube, I added it to other playlists that were applicable rather than just the brand new one for that series. So hopefully that'll get more people's attention. There were 44, which is excellent for a Monday night. So alrighty. Right now, out there in the heavens is a significant sign. It's the waning moon. The moon is facing the sun, which has the right side disappearing day after day until it becomes a new moon, completely protected by the earth. The signs in the heavens are consistent, and they are an accurate timepiece, a universal timepiece, shall we say. And so with man's calendar systems, they are flawed. Ours, for example, we have to have a leap year every 4 years to catch up and keep the calendar accurate. That little extra time, we haven't figured out how to account for it other than the way that we have it currently. Likewise, previous calendars. There were solar calendars, lunar calendars, a Sothic calendar with the Egyptians. They had one of those. And so mankind has been trying to create an earthly timepiece, a sundial for a solar calendar. It was pretty much the first second-hand watch. But when you see Revelation chapter 12, talking about signs in the heavens, he's giving universal dates so that anyone can find out the date according to their calendar. And so according to our calendar, the first sign that he gives, the sign of the woman, occurred on the 23rd of September 2017. That's the sign of the Son of Man, the man-child. Unto us a child is born, unto us a child is given. Matthew, a virgin shall give birth to a child. They're referring to the sign, not the actual birthday. And so when Matthew 24, the author of Matthew, says, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." No. That's just from somebody who doesn't know, so he then assumes nobody will know. If I don't know, nobody knows. And so all it takes is for somebody to know to debunk that claim. And sure enough, that's what John does in his book of Revelation, chapter 12. Of that day and hour, he reveals in verse 1 of chapter 12. 23rd of September, 2017. And so, when we look at the next verse, when he's saying, "Oh, we don't know the day or the hour," And then he goes and says, but as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of, notice, Son of Man be. Like I said, we do know the day and the hour. John the Revelator gives it. And so the story of Noah, we now see is a prophecy of the Son of Man to occur around the 23rd of September 2017. And so what is the similarities with the days of Noah? So we have to go back to the story of Noah. And so the story of Noah involves a man whose descent is a little warped from the original documents. I've gone over that in other videos. He's technically supposed to be the descendant of Cain because Abel was murdered. And the throne of the firstborn, Abel, was usurped by Cain, even though they incorrectly call Cain the firstborn. So why is he murdering Abel if Cain is already the firstborn? See, the Bible author did not want to put in the actual story. He put in his own altered story instead. And so you can see that that's the case with the next son that Adam and Eve have. They call him Seth. Oh, isn't that interesting? The original source document for the story that was altered by the biblical author just happens to have the brother who murders the firstborn birthright king on the throne son. That murderer is named Seth. Isn't that interesting? And so Noah comes from the descent of Seth, who is technically Cain, who murdered the first king, who set the path for heavenly salvation. If you understand that Osiris is the one I'm referring to from the Egyptian documents as the source for all religion, then yes, Osiris was murdered by his brother Seth, and Seth took over the throne, usurped it, Jacob did, and sent the kingdom of Egypt into the Dark Ages. And thus it needed to be restored, restoring the kingdom of Osiris with the son of Osiris as the legitimate heir to the throne. But because he was murdered, it was somebody who comes through the lineage of Set. So he's both Set and Osiris, his son. And the Egyptians tell that in their stories. They have Isis, who gathers in the people from around the world, the gathering of Israel, to Egypt, gathering the body of Osiris to Egypt. And that's why we get the sacrament from, with the broken body that is representing bread, the house of bread in the constellation of Virgo, where the womb is, where babies are born, house of bread, Osiris, body, sacrament, bread, all symbolisms here. And Horus being the son who is born, who restores the kingdom. So the sacrament, even though it's in remembrance of the death of Osiris, his broken body and his blood that was shed and tossed into the waters of the Nile, and then scattered throughout the world, which needed to then be gathered, as we gather for sacrament, typically, with a church. And I did the video the other day, Sunday, about we don't need church to partake of the sacrament. If you are a priest in the Aaronic priesthood, Mormons, you can do the sacrament all on your own. If if you are the priesthood holder in the home. And if there's a dad, he gets to help with the Aaronic priesthood holders. But we don't need to gather to church. Church is just part of the symbolism. And if you notice the story of Noah, it's just Noah and his family. Nobody else gathered. And that's part of the symbolism or the prophecy with today. As we see that everybody is scattered in isolation. We're not able to gather to Zion. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. And so, Noah is a descendant of both the true king and the usurper king. And of course, the parents of the children are the combined descent. And so grandfathers typically are also referred to as father. And so that's who Noah is representing. He's representing Horus, the son of Osiris. And if you hadn't guessed, 23rd September 2017 is in the constellation of Virgo when Jupiter is born at the House of Bethlehem, or House of Bread, sorry. Bethlehem, the House of Bread. And so Noah is that symbol from the Egyptian documents. And what you have is an interesting storyline, because Noah's flood is actually an Egyptian creation story. It's the Ogdod creation story, which in Egyptian is 8. And thus 8 people, the 4 men and their wives. And so this concept of, Egyptus came with, with Noah as the plural wife, and Ham was through her, and therefore the blood of the Canaanites, who was the son of Ham, or the grandson of Ham, wasn't it? Or was it? No, it was the son of Ham. Gets cursed. And so, there's that weird story. How did Canaan get punished for something Ham did? Well, you got to understand the Egyptian story upon which it was based to go, okay, now I see your collection. And coincidentally, Joseph Smith had it figured out. Abraham chapter 1. It's all in there. He knows. That's what I said. He's a translator. I am shocked and horrified that Egyptologists could not figure it out and could not identify it. Shame on you guys. Shame on you. Is it just because you didn't want Joseph to be an Egyptologist? When you went through the education and all those years and all that money and all that debt? Is that why you're refusing to acknowledge Joseph as a translator? Anyway, we're not going to talk about that story per se, just that understand that it's the creation story that's being retold as the Egyptians retold it in the Ogdod story. There's the Heliopolis creation story, which is much older and goes back to the origins of the Egyptians, which involves the story of Horus and Set, Osiris and Set as well, and how they came to be born, and 5 days added to the calendar with Thoth, who is David. And so the days of Noah. now that we've got the background understood, we have in the story of giants, and that's only understood when you understand the source that they're getting the information from, which is the Egyptian records. Pharaohs are always portrayed larger than everyone else. That's just how they did it. And thus pharaohs and the deities also were all represented larger than everyone else. And so those were the giants being referred to in Genesis. And so when you understand that the giants were breeding with the daughters of the sons of God, which the sons of God are the giants. So the sons of man being giants is kind of wrong. But what they're trying to get across is that the Egyptian pharaohs were not the legitimate heirs to the throne. Because remember, Set had murdered Osiris. Cain killed Abel. Get your nose. And so the whole kingdom fell into apostasy, into the Dark Ages. And so all of the pharaohs during that time period were apostate pharaohs, the evil pharaohs, the false Christs, false prophets, false messiahs. And that's what it's being referred to there, is that there's a time of darkness and apostasy. And so Noah comes out of this apostasy period. He is to restore the kingdom of David, Thoth, restoring Osiris's temple rituals, the religion, and the government, the kingdom. And so he's warning of destruction that is coming. And for them, it's a flood, which is symbolic of death with the flood, and then rebirth, surviving the flood with an ark. And so baptism comes from this. This is the ritual of the temple, and that's the first one, is baptism. The death, burial, and resurrection of Osiris. And so Noah, the last day's flood, or the last day's destruction, is not supposed to be a flood. That's a symbolism of creation. Because women know this especially. Men plant the seed, parting the veil of the river of water. The Ark of the Covenant penetrates the waters and plants the posterity in the promised land, in water. And then the water bursts and the baby is born. Same symbol. And so that's what you have with Noah. It's not supposed to be a flood in the last days. It's the concept of the temple rituals and the creation of heaven and earth, of the Nile River, of human beings. All those different interpretations or levels of translation are understood with just one petroglyph. That's what I'm referring to when I talk about translation levels for each petroglyph. And so what we have is only a partial rendering of the petroglyphs from Egyptian. We have Genesis 1:1, gives us creation of heaven and earth, and then sort of in 2, sort of get the Nile River part of it, but the author does not quite understand it. And then you have Adam and Eve having children. Again, the same petroglyph as chapter 1, with the Nile as well. So different translations, all contained from the same source petroglyph. And so this is a prophecy for Noah, the last days, which we know from John, 23rd September 2017. It's now. It's here. This is it. And so what we're looking for is a destruction to come, of which a man like Moses is to restore the kingdom of David, the religion and the government from destruction. And what is that destruction? We now know. It's not a flood. It's the coronavirus. Do not abbreviate it, because you'll forget the intended meaning. It is the king crown virus. Not a coincidence that it's the crown virus, because the crown is to be restored as the crown is destroyed. And so we have Noah, who goes out and says, hey guys, destruction is coming. We need to build the ark to protect us. The ark, similar to the Ark of the Covenant, goes in the Holy of Holies of the temple. So there's the religious temple ritual symbolism in that. But it's also the restoring of the kingdom, which is Zion and New Jerusalem, where the temple and the seat of government for the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the last days Moses. And this Noah, as they call him here. And notice where the ark lands. On the top of a mountain. You ever look at your $1 bill? What is at the top of the mountain of the Egyptian pyramid? The all-seeing eye on the capstone. Remember the scriptures that talk about the head of the corner was rejected by the builders, but then became the capstone. The cornerstone becomes the capstone, the author and finisher of the faith, Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the mountain of the Lord. That is the Holy of Holies, the capstone, in symbolism. So the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies at the top of the mountains. Not in the valley of the mountains, Mormons, the top of the mountains. I have to remind Mormons of that, because Utah is not the fulfillment. Joseph Smith specifically said, we are going to build the mountain cities of Zion and New Jerusalem in southern Illinois. We need to do that before Christ comes, the man like Moses, because Joseph Smith knew he was going to be murdered. It wasn't going to be him. And so Noah tells the people say, I don't see it raining. What about today? I don't see a coronavirus. Of course you don't. You know, it's the plague of Egypt that kills the firstborn, the heir to the crown of Egypt. Coronavirus. That's how they're all interconnected as prophecies of the last days. Story of Moses, likewise. That's who the Jews are looking for, is a man like Moses. That's who Mormons are looking for, a man like Moses. And so Noah couldn't get anybody to believe him. And as the Book of Mormon says, Ether and Moroni, I record the entire destruction of my people. I guess that's what's going to happen for us. That there will be no Zion. That the enemy will win and destroy mankind. The entire destruction of mankind. Because once America goes, other corrupt nations are going to be more emboldened because they don't have America to stop them. So the whole world is about to go into war once Trump fully destroys America as the puppet president of Putin, which I'm talking about in my other video is the symbol of the church of Lucifer. And so, yeah, Noah built the city of Zion all by himself, and only his family were saved. If only he had a family. There you go. I think that covers it. But notice, Son of Man, Son of Man, Son of Man, Son of Man. Son of Man, Son of Man, Son of Man. What a man. Alrighty, I got another one planned for the 10 virgins as well, because that's also a symbol. Nobody's coming to the wedding feast, just as nobody came to Noah's flood. So, we'll see if I get to it. I might. We'll see.